before I let you go. I'm yours," she sobbed, clutching his shoulders. "I'm yours." It wasn't just sex. It was a sealing of the pact. In the darkness of the penthouse, amidst the ruins of her bakery and the threats of a turf war, Vanessa Collins found her sanctuary. It wasn't in a building. It was in the arms of the man who looked at her scars and her curves and saw a masterpiece. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets. Silvio pulled the duvet up over them, tucking it around her shoulders with surprising gentleness. He pulled her back against his chest, his arm draped protectively over her waist. "The gala is in 2 days," he said into the silence, his voice sleepy but alert. "I know," Vanessa murmured, tracing the muscles of his forearm. "You will wear the purple dress," he said, "and you will wear the necklace I have in the safe, and everyone in that room will know exactly who you belong to." "Is that a threat, Mr. Rinaldi?" she teased sleepily. "It is a promise, Mrs. Rinaldi to be." He kissed the top of her head. "Sleep now. Tomorrow we rebuild your empire. Tonight, you just rest." Vanessa closed her eyes. The fear of the Albanians was still there, lurking in the back of her mind. But as she drifted off to the steady rhythm of Silvio's heartbeat, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the consort. And God help anyone who tried to burn her down again. The Rinaldi Foundation Winter Gala was not merely a party. It was a coronation, held in the grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel. It was the singular night of the year where the lines between Chicago's legitimate elite and its shadow rulers blurred under the cover of charity and champagne. For Vanessa, standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the penthouse dressing room, it felt less like a celebration and more like preparing for battle. She smoothed her hands down the front of the dress Silvio had commissioned for her. It was not the purple silk she had worn at the boutique, though that hung in her closet like a trophy. This was something else entirely. It was liquid gold. The fabric was a heavy, metallic lame that looked like molten metal poured directly over her skin. It possessed no structure of its own, relying entirely on her body to give it shape. It clung to the slope of her breasts, cinched tight at her waist, and flared dramatically over her hips, cascading to the floor in a pool of shimmering light. It was a dress that demanded attention, a dress that refused to apologize for the space it occupied. "Turn around." Silvio's voice came from the doorway. Vanessa didn't jump. She had grown used to the way he moved, silent as a panther on the marble floors. She turned slowly, the gold fabric catching the light with every movement. Silvio stood in the frame, wearing a tuxedo that fit him with lethal precision. The stark black of the wool made his skin look paler, his eyes darker. He stopped a few feet away from her, his hands twitching at his sides as if he were restraining himself from reaching out. He didn't say a word. He just looked. He looked at her with a hunger that made her knees weak, a raw, possessive intensity that stripped away the air in the room. "Is it too much?" Vanessa asked, her voice breathless. "I feel like a walking Oscar statue." "You look like a deity," Silvio corrected, his voice rough. He stepped closer, entering her personal space. "You look like something men would start wars over. Gold was the right choice. It is the only metal precious enough to touch you." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a long, flat velvet case. "Turn around again, hair up." Vanessa obeyed, sweeping her heavy brown curls off her neck. She felt the cold metal of a necklace against her skin, followed by the warmth of Silvio's fingers as he fastened the clasp. "Look," he commanded. Vanessa looked in the mirror. Resting against her collarbone was a necklace of yellow diamonds, heavy and intricate. It was a piece of jewelry that cost more than her entire neighborhood block. "Silvio," she whispered, touching the stones. I can't wear this. It's too much responsibility." "It is not a gift," Silvio said, his eyes meeting hers in the reflection. He placed his hands on her bare shoulders, his thumbs tracing the line of her neck. "It is a collar. Tonight, everyone in that room needs to know exactly who you are. You are not just my fiancé. You are the Rinaldi matriarch. You wear the family vault around your neck, so that the wolves know you are protected." "The wolves," Vanessa repeated, the reality of the evening settling in. The fire at the warehouse had been extinguished, the mess cleaned up, but the threat of the Albanian faction still loomed like smoke in a dark room. "Do you think they'll be there tonight?" "The Albanians were not invited, but their eyes will be watching," Silvio said, his expression hardening. "Security is tighter than the White House. I have 50 men in the perimeter. You are safe, Vanessa. I promise you." He turned her around to face him, his grip on her shoulders firm. "But you stay by my side. You do not go to the restroom alone. You do not step out for air. If you need anything, you tell me." "Understood." "Understood." She nodded. He leaned down and kissed her, careful not to ruin her lipstick, but the press of his mouth was firm, a seal of ownership. "Then let us go. The city is waiting to meet its queen." The ballroom was a sea of black ties and designer gowns, a cacophony of polite laughter and clinking crystal. The air smelled of expensive lilies and old money. When Silvio and Vanessa appeared at the top of the grand staircase, the room didn't just go quiet. It halted. Vanessa felt the weight of 300 pairs of eyes landing on her. A month ago, she would have wanted to shrink, to fold herself into a corner and disappear. She would have tugged at her dress, worried about the roll of her stomach or the width of her arms. But tonight, she felt the heavy gold fabric hugging her like armor. She felt the weight of the diamonds at her throat. And most importantly, she felt Silvio's hand on the small of her back. A burning brand of support. They descended the stairs. Flashbulbs popped from the press pen near the entrance, blinding white explosions that captured the moment. "Smile," Silvio murmured in her ear. "They are terrified of us. Let them see we are untouchable." Vanessa smiled. It wasn't the polite, apologetic smile of the girl who served cookies. It was a sharp, confident curve of her lips that she had learned from him. As they reached the floor, the crowd parted. People who wouldn't have looked twice at Vanessa Collins, the baker, were now clamoring to shake the hand of Vanessa Collins, the future Mrs. Rinaldi. "Silvio, wonderful to see you." A portly man with a red face and a sash indicating he was a city official bustled over. This was Councilman Patterson, the target of their entire charade, and this must be the lady responsible for domesticating the tiger, Vanessa. Silvio introduced her, his voice smooth as silk. "My fiancé, the heart of my home." "A pleasure, Councilman," Vanessa said, extending her hand. "Silvio speaks highly of your work with the zoning committee." Patterson beamed, pumping her hand. "Charmed, truly charmed. I must say, Rinaldi, you've outdone yourself. A baker, salt of the earth. We need more traditional family values in this city, none of these flighty models you used to parade around. This is a woman of substance." "She is everything," Silvio agreed, his eyes not leaving Vanessa's face. The night blurred into a series of handshakes and shallow conversations. Vanessa played her part perfectly. She discussed the bakery, she laughed at bad jokes, she deflected questions about the wedding date with coy smiles. Throughout it all, Silvio remained a constant presence at her side. He was charming, attentive, the perfect doting fiancé, but Vanessa could feel the tension radiating off him. His eyes were constantly moving, scanning the perimeter, checking the exits, watching the waiters. "Vanessa!" The voice cut through the drone of the string quartet. Vanessa turned to see Jessica weaving through the crowd. Her friend looked pale in a silver-sheathed dress, her eyes wide and anxious. "Jess," Vanessa breathed, stepping away from a boring conversation about municipal bonds. Jessica practically collapsed into Vanessa, hugging her tightly. "Oh my God, Ness. I am so sorry. I am so sorry." "Sorry for what?" Vanessa asked, pulling back to look at her friend. "For everything. For the fire. I saw the news about the warehouse," Jessica whispered frantically. "I set you up with him because I thought you'd get some money and pay off the bank. I didn't think you'd get targeted by a mob war. If anything happens to you, I'll never forgive myself." Vanessa gripped Jessica's arms. "Jess, breathe. I'm okay. Look at me. I'm fine. You're wearing a diamond necklace worth more than my life," Jessica hissed. "That's not fine, Ness. That's hazard pay. You have to get out. Maybe we can call the FBI, maybe." "I don't want to get out," Vanessa said. The words came out before she could filter them, honest and stark. Jessica froze. "What?" "I love him," Vanessa admitted. It was the first time she had said it aloud to anyone other than herself. He's not what you think, Jess. He protects me. He sees me. The bakery is safe because of him. I'm safe because of him. He's a criminal, Vanessa. He's a man who burns down the world for me, Vanessa corrected. I'm staying, not because of the contract, because I choose him. Jessica stared at her, searching her face for signs of coercion. She must have found the truth in Vanessa's eyes, because her shoulders slumped. You really love him. Yeah, I really do. Then God help you. Jessica sighed, squeezing her hand. But you look incredible. That dress is a weapon, Ness. Silvio picked it out. Vanessa grinned. Just then, Silvio materialized at her side. Everything all right? He looked at Jessica with cool detachment. We're good, Vanessa said, linking her arm through his. Just catching up. Good. Councilman Patterson wants to make a toast. We need to be near the stage. They moved toward the front of the room. The crowd was dense here. Waiters with silver trays circulated, offering more champagne. The air was getting warm, stifling. Vanessa scanned the room, a habit she had picked up from Silvio in the last few days. She watched the faces in the crowd. The bored wives, the ambitious young men, the tired service staff. Her eyes landed on a waiter near the edge of the stage. He was thin, his uniform slightly too large for his frame. He was trembling, the champagne flutes on his tray rattling softly against each other. He looked sick, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Vanessa frowned. There was something familiar about the slope of his shoulders, the nervous tick of his head. He turned slightly. It was Brandon. Vanessa's breath hitched. How? How was he here? He was supposed to be in jail. Silvio had said the charges were sticky. Breaking and entering. Assault. He shouldn't be out on bail. Silvio, she whispered, her fingers digging into his bicep. Not now, Tesoro. My treasure, Silvio murmured, his attention focused on the stage where Patterson was tapping a microphone. The speech is starting. Silvio, look, she hissed urgently. The waiter, at 3 o'clock. Silvio turned his head, his annoyance vanishing instantly as he followed her gaze. He saw Brandon. His body went rigid, not with surprise, but with instant calculation. His hand tightened around her waist, subtle as a warning. Eyes forward, he murmured. Stay at my side. Brandon wasn't looking at them. He was looking at the crowd, his eyes darting wildly. He looked terrified. He wasn't acting like an assassin. He was acting like a cornered animal. He took a step forward, shouting something incoherent. You think you're better than me? Brandon screamed, his voice cracking. He threw the tray of champagne onto the floor. The crash of breaking glass silenced the room instantly. You're all filth. You think money makes you clean? The crowd gasped and recoiled. Security guards began to move in from the perimeter, pushing through the confused guests. It's a distraction, Silvio said, his voice ice cold. He wasn't looking at Brandon anymore. He was scanning the room, scanning the balconies, scanning the shadows. He is the bait. Brandon continued to scream, flailing his arms, drawing every eye in the room toward him. Look at me. I'm talking to you. Silvio grabbed Vanessa's waist. Get down, now. But Vanessa didn't drop. Her eyes were frantically searching the darkness of the mezzanine level, the balcony that overlooked the ballroom. Why use a loud, unstable ex-husband unless you wanted everyone looking down and to the left? She saw it. A tiny, almost invisible glint of light from the velvet curtains on the balcony. And then, a small red dot. It danced across the black lapel of Silvio's tuxedo, settling directly over his heart. Time seemed to stretch and warp. The sound of Brandon screaming faded into a dull roar. The music had stopped. The only thing Vanessa could see was that red dot, the harbinger of death. Silvio was distracted, pushing her behind him, putting his body between her and Brandon, assuming the threat was the lunatic on the floor. He didn't see the laser. He was protecting her from the wrong direction. Silvio! She screamed. She didn't think about the dress. She didn't think about the diamonds. She didn't think about fear. She threw herself at him. She wasn't a small woman. She hit him with the full force of her weight, driving her shoulder into his chest. Silvio, caught off guard and unbalanced, toppled backward. They hit the marble floor hard, Vanessa landing on top of him. Crack. The sound wasn't like a gunshot in a movie. It was a sharp, percussive snap that sounded like a whip breaking the sound barrier. Something tore through the air where Silvio's chest had been a millisecond before. The bullet slammed into the heavy oak chair behind them, shattering the wood into splinters. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Screams tore through the air. People dropped to the floor, covering their heads. "Stay down!" Silvio roared. He flipped them over instantly, pinning Vanessa to the floor with his body. He covered her completely, shielding her head with his hand, his other hand reaching into his jacket for the gun he wasn't supposed to have but always carried. "Did they hit you?" he demanded, his face inches from hers. His eyes were wild, black holes of terror. "Vanessa, did they hit you?" "No," she gasped. The wind knocked out of her. "The balcony! It came from the balcony!" More shots rang out, but these were different. Rapid, controlled bursts. Rinaldi's security team was returning fire. Silvio didn't look up. He kept her pinned, his body a human barricade. He was murmuring a stream of curses in Italian, a prayer of violence. "Clear! The balcony is clear!" A voice shouted over the comms earpiece Silvio was wearing. "Secure the exits! No one leaves!" Silvio barked back. Slowly, the chaos subsided into the whimpering of terrified guests and the shouting of security teams. Silvio sat up, but he kept a hand on Vanessa's chest, keeping her down. He scanned her frantically. "Are you hurt?" "Tell me." "I'm okay," Vanessa said, trying to sit up. My arm stings." Silvio looked at her arm. The gold dress was ripped near the elbow. Blood was welling up, bright red against the metallic fabric, dripping onto the white marble floor. "You're shot," Silvio choked out, his face draining of all color. Vanessa looked at the wound. She saw a shard of crystal embedded in her skin. No, it's glass. From Brandon's tray. I landed on the glass. She reached to pull it out, but Silvio caught her hand. "Don't touch it. Do not touch it." He looked at the blood. Her blood. On the floor of his event. The transformation in him was terrifying. The concern vanished, replaced by a cold, demonic rage that made the temperature in the room seem to drop 10 degrees. He stood up, pulling Vanessa with him, but keeping her tucked into his side so tightly it hurt. He looked across the room. Brandon was on the ground, zip-tied again, pinned by 2 guards. He was sobbing, shouting that he didn't know about the gun, that they forced him, that he just wanted his debt cleared. Silvio didn't even look at him. He looked up at the balcony where his men were dragging a body away. The sniper. "Marco," Silvio said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Marco appeared, looking grim. "Boss, we got the shooter. Albanian contractor. He's dead. Brandon is in custody. We're locking down the hotel." "Get the car," Silvio ordered. "Take Vanessa to the house. Get the doctor." "Silvio, I'm fine," Vanessa protested, though her arm was throbbing nastily. "It's just a cut." Silvio turned to her. He took her face in his hands. His fingers were trembling. "You pushed me," he whispered, as if he couldn't quite process the information. "You saw the laser. You pushed me. You were looking the wrong way," she said, her voice shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "You took a bullet for me. It missed. It missed because you moved me. If you had been a second slower." He closed his eyes, taking a shuddering breath. When he opened them, the humanity was gone. "Go with Marco. I have work to do." "What work?" Vanessa asked, fear gripping her again. "Silvio, don't do anything stupid. The police are coming. The police can have the mess," Silvio said. He looked at the blood on her arm again. "The Albanians sent a clown to distract me and a coward to kill me. And they made you bleed." He kissed her forehead. It felt like a goodbye. "Go home, Vanessa. Wait for me." "Silvio." He turned away. He walked toward where Brandon was being held. The look on his face promised a violence so profound that even his own men stepped back as he approached. Marco gently took Vanessa's uninjured arm. "Come, Signora." "Ma'am, we must go. Now." Vanessa let herself be led away, her gold dress trailing through the debris of the ruined gala. She looked back one last time. Silvio was standing over Brandon, looking down at him with the detached curiosity of an executioner. He wasn't yelling. He was just standing there, radiating death. She realized then that the war wasn't coming. The war had just started, and she had fired the first shot by saving the king. As Marco ushered her out the side exit into the waiting armored SUV, Vanessa slumped against the leather seat. The pain in her arm was sharp, burning, but it was nothing compared to the cold dread settling in her stomach. She had saved him. She knew that. But looking at Silvio's face in those final moments, she wondered if she had saved the man she loved, or if she had just unleashed the monster he kept chained for her sake. The car sped off into the Chicago night. Vanessa touched the yellow diamonds around her neck. They felt heavy. They felt like a target, but as she looked at her blood staining the gold fabric of her dress, she tightened her jaw. Let them come. She thought fiercely. Let them try. She wasn't the baker anymore. She was the woman who had tackled a mafia don to save his life. And if Silvio was going to burn the city down for her, she would be there to hand him the matches. The silence in the penthouse was not peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, and smelled of antiseptic and iron. The expansive living room, usually a monument to minimalist luxury, had been transformed into a makeshift trauma unit. Vanessa sat on the edge of the leather sofa, her gold lame dress, the armor that was supposed to make her invincible, ruined. The sleeve had been sheared away by surgical scissors, leaving jagged edges of metallic fabric hanging around her shoulder. Her arm was numb, deadened by a local anesthetic, but she could feel the tug and pull of the needle as Dr. Vanchetti, a man with graying hair and hands as steady as a stone, stitched the laceration closed. 3 inches lower and it would have severed the radial artery, the doctor murmured, his voice low, strictly professional. He tied off a knot with a swift, practiced motion. As it is, Mrs. Rinaldi, excuse me, Miss Collins, is lucky. It's a flesh wound, deep, but it will heal. The scarring should be minimal if treated continuously with vitamin E. Silvio did not speak. He was standing by the panoramic window, his back to the room, looking out at the city that had tried to kill the woman sitting on his sofa. He had not moved for 20 minutes. He had stripped off his tuxedo jacket, and his white dress shirt was rolled up to the elbows, the fabric stained with smears of Vanessa's blood. It was a stark, horrifying contrast to the pristine nature of the room. "Done," Dr. Vanchetti announced, applying a sterile gauze pad and taping it down. He began to pack his instruments into a black leather bag. "She needs rest, fluids, and no heavy lifting for 2 weeks. I'll leave a prescription for painkillers, but I suspect she's in shock. Monitor her breathing tonight." "Leave us," Silvio said. He didn't turn around. The command was flat, devoid of politeness. "Of course, Mr. Rinaldi. Call if there is bleeding." The doctor nodded to Vanessa, a look of pity in his eyes, and hastily retreated toward the elevator, escorted by Marco. When the elevator door slid shut, the silence returned, louder than before. Vanessa touched the bandage on her arm. The numbness was starting to fade, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. She looked at Silvio's back. The muscles in his shoulders were coiled so tight they looked painful, straining against the fine cotton of his shirt. "Silvio," she whispered. He flinched. Visibly flinched, as if her voice were another bullet. He turned around slowly. His face was a mask of cold, devastating fury, but Vanessa knew him well enough now to see the cracks. His eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, were hollow. He looked at her arm, then at the ruined dress, and finally at her face. He looked like a man surveying the wreckage of his own soul. "You are leaving," he stated. Vanessa blinked, confused by the sudden pivot. "What?" "The contract is void," Silvio said, walking toward the kitchen island where a decanter of whiskey sat. He poured a glass but didn't drink it. He just gripped the crystal tumbler until his knuckles turned white. "I have transferred the full agreed amount plus a severance bonus to your offshore account. The bakery is paid for. The deed is in your name. You have enough money to move to Europe, buy a villa in Tuscany, and never work another day in your life." "Silvio, stop," Vanessa said, trying to stand up. A wave of dizziness hit her, and she swayed. "Sit down," he roared, the sudden volume making her jump. He composed himself instantly, but his voice shook. "Sit down, Vanessa. Do not move." "I'm not going to Europe," she said, her voice trembling but stubborn. She sank back onto the sofa. "We have a deal. 1 year. The deal was protection." Silvio slammed the glass down on the counter. Ideally, it would have shattered, but the heavy crystal just made a dull, thudding sound that echoed like a gavel. "The deal was that I fix your life, and you fix my image. I did not hire you to bleed on my floor. I did not hire you to take a bullet meant for me. It wasn't a bullet," she argued weakly. "It was glass. It was an assassination attempt." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping in front of her, towering over her. He looked terrified. "You pushed me. You saw the laser and you pushed me. Do you have any idea how stupid that was? You are a civilian. You are a baker. You run when bullets fly. You do not throw yourself in front of a man who deserves to die 1,000 times over." "I didn't think," Vanessa admitted, looking up at him. Tears pricked her eyes, not from pain, but from the overwhelming intensity of his fear. "I just saw the dot. I knew I couldn't let them hurt you." "Why?" he demanded, dropping to his knees in front of her. He didn't touch her. He kept his hands hovering, as if afraid he would break her further. "Why would you do that? For a bakery? For money?" "No," Vanessa whispered. She reached out with her good hand and touched his face. His skin was cold, his jaw rough with evening stubble. "You know why, Silvio? I told you at the gala. I didn't do it for the contract. I did it because I choose you. I choose the monster." Silvio closed his eyes, leaning his face into her palm. He let out a shuddering breath that sounded like a sob trapped in his chest. "You are a fool, a beautiful, reckless fool. I cannot protect you, Vanessa. I thought I could. I built this fortress. I hired the army. And still, they touched you. My arrogance almost got you killed. But I'm alive," she said firmly. "And you're alive. That's what matters. We're still here." He opened his eyes. The brown irises were almost black, swirling with a darkness she had never seen before. It wasn't fear anymore. It was resolution. "Yes," he said softly. "We are here, but they are still out there." He stood up, pulling away from her touch. The moment of vulnerability vanished, replaced by the icy armor of the boss. He walked to the hallway closet and pulled out a fresh black coat. He checked the magazine of his pistol, the metallic click-clack of the slide sounding obscene in the quiet room. "Where are you going?" Vanessa asked, panic rising in her chest. She pushed herself up, ignoring the dizziness. "Silvio, the police are all over the city. You can't go out there." "The police are busy processing the crime scene at the hotel," Silvio said calmly. He holstered the weapon. "And Brandon is in a holding cell at the precinct. But the Albanians are waiting to see if they succeeded." "Silvio, please," she begged, moving toward him. Her legs felt heavy. "Don't go. Stay here. Let the police handle it." "The police collect evidence, Vanessa. I collect debts." He stopped at the door and turned to her. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of love and lethal intent. "Marco is outside the door. He has orders to let no one in, not even God himself. You will take the pills the doctor left. You will sleep, and when you wake up, the world will be clean." "Silvio," she cried out as he opened the door. He paused. "I love you, Vanessa. That is why I have to finish this." The door clicked shut. The lock engaged with a heavy thud. Vanessa was alone in the glass cage, the scent of her own blood still lingering in the air. The warehouse district on the south side of Chicago was a graveyard of industry. Rusted skeletons of old factories loomed against the night sky, their broken windows like hollow eyes staring out at the river. The wind howled through the alleyways, carrying the smell of rot and gasoline. Inside Warehouse 4B, the atmosphere was frozen. A single industrial light hung from the ceiling, casting a harsh, yellow cone of light onto the concrete floor. In the center of the light, kneeling on the damp ground, was Brandon. He was still wearing the waiter's uniform from the gala, though it was now torn and stained with sweat and grime. His hands were zip-tied behind his back. His face was swollen, a map of bruises from where security had subdued him. He was weeping, a low, pathetic sound that echoed off the metal walls. Standing in the shadows were 3 men. They were not Italians. They were tall, broad, with harsh features and cold eyes. The Albanians. Their leader, a man named Luca, stood with his arms crossed, smoking a cigarette. He looked impatient. "Where is he?" Luca growled, checking his watch. He said midnight. "It is midnight. Maybe he is dead," one of his men sneered. "Maybe the shot didn't miss." "The shot missed." A voice echoed from the darkness of the main bay door. The Albanians spun around, hands going to their jackets. Silvio Rinaldi stepped into the light. He was alone. He walked with a casual, terrifying confidence, his hands open at his sides. He didn't look like a man who had almost been assassinated 3 hours ago. He looked like a man who had come to inspect a property. "Rinaldi," Luca said, relaxing slightly but keeping his hand near his holster. "You have balls coming here alone. We heard you had a bad night." "A messy night," Silvio corrected. He stopped 10 feet away from them, ignoring Brandon entirely. "You broke the rules, Luca. We had a truce. Territory lines were drawn. Business changes." Luca shrugged, dropping his cigarette and crushing it under his boot. "You were getting too strong. The construction contracts. The unions. You were squeezing us out. And then you marry the baker? We thought you had gone soft. Distracted." "Distracted." Silvio repeated the word, tasting it. He looked at Brandon, who was looking up at him with desperate hope. "Mr. Rinaldi," Brandon choked out. Tell them I did what they asked. I made the scene. I screamed. You promised. They promised if I did it, my debt was cleared." Silvio looked down at the man who had tormented Vanessa for years. The man who had called her fat, who had stolen her money, who had tried to rob her sanctuary. "You see," Silvio said to Luca, his voice conversational. "This is where I am confused. This man, he owes you money, correct?" 12,000, Luca said, plus interest. "And he offered to pay his debt by creating a distraction at my gala so your sniper could take a shot at me. He was eager to please," Luca smirked. "He hates you. He said you stole his wife." "He threw away his wife," Silvio corrected. "I found her." Silvio took a step closer to Brandon. Brandon flinched, expecting a kick. "I pulled some strings at the precinct," Silvio said to Brandon. "I made sure the charges stuck. Every report, every signature, every photograph. Then my lawyers arranged your release just long enough for tonight. I needed you walking into my ballroom in a uniform, thinking you were clever. I brought you here. Thank you." Brandon sobbed, relief washing over his face. "Oh God, thank you. I knew you were reasonable. I'll leave town. I swear I'll never see her again." "I know you won't," Silvio said. He turned back to Luca. "Here's the deal. I am a businessman. I believe in paying debts. This man owes you money. He is yours. Take him. Do what you want with him. Consider his debt transferred." Brandon's eyes went wide. "What? No, you can't." Luca laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You brought him to us? As a gift?" "As a payment," Silvio said. "For the bullet." "You are a cold bastard, Rinaldi." Luca grinned, motioning for his men to grab Brandon. "I like that. Maybe we can renegotiate the territory after all. You give us the docks. We forget this happened." 2 Albanians grabbed Brandon by the arms. He screamed, thrashing against them. "Silvio, please. She loves me. Vanessa loves me. She won't forgive you." Silvio didn't blink. "She despises you. You are a ghost, Brandon." As the men dragged Brandon toward the back exit, Luca stepped forward, extending a hand. "So, we are good? No more war?" Silvio looked at the extended hand. Then he looked at Luca's eyes. "You misunderstand," Silvio said softly. "What?" "I gave you Brandon because he is trash, and trash belongs in the dump. Silvio said. He unbuttoned his coat. But you fired a weapon into a room where my wife was standing. You made her bleed. Luca's smile faltered. He saw the shift in Silvio's eyes, the total absence of humanity. He reached for his gun. He was too slow. Silvio drew his weapon with a speed that blurred in the yellow light. Bang, bang. 2 shots. Center mass. Luca crumpled backward, a look of shock frozen on his face. The 2 men holding Brandon dropped him and reached for their weapons. Silvio didn't seek cover. He walked forward, firing with rhythmic precision. Bang! The man on the left fell. Bang! The man on the right spun around, clutching his shoulder, and Silvio finished him with a second shot to the head. Silence returned to the warehouse, broken only by Brandon's hyperventilating sobs. Silvio stood over the bodies. He checked them, kicking the guns away. Then he turned to Brandon, who was curled in a fetal position on the floor, surrounded by corpses. Please, Brandon whispered. Please don't kill me. Silvio holstered his gun. He adjusted his cuffs. I told you, Silvio said, his voice echoing in the vast space. I am not going to kill you. I gave you to them. They are dead now, but your debt remains. He walked toward the exit. Wait, Brandon screamed. You can't leave me here. The police. The bodies. They'll think I did it. I'm the only one alive. Silvio paused at the door. He didn't look back. Exactly, Silvio said. The police will find a drug deal gone wrong. 3 dead Albanian mobsters. And 1 man holding the bag, with his fingerprints all over the scene and a motive a mile wide. You won't go to jail for robbery, Brandon. You're going to prison for triple homicide. You'll never see daylight again. Silvio! Brandon screamed, his voice cracking into madness. Silvio! Silvio walked out into the cold Chicago night. He took out his phone and dialed a number. Detective, Silvio said calmly. I have an anonymous tip about a shooting at the old shipyard warehouse. Yes, it sounds like a gang dispute. You might want to hurry. He hung up. He tossed the burner phone into the river. He looked at his hands. There was no blood on them, but he could feel the weight of the souls he had just dispatched. He didn't care about the Albanians. He didn't care about Brandon. He only cared about the drop of blood on the gold dress. He got into his car. Home, he told the driver. The sun was rising over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. The light filtered through the sheer curtains of the guest bedroom. No, her bedroom. Vanessa woke up slowly. The first thing she felt was the throbbing in her arm. The second was a wave of nausea so potent it made the room spin. She bolted upright, ignoring the pain in her arm, and scrambled to the ensuite bathroom. She barely made it to the toilet before her stomach emptied itself. She knelt there on the cold tiles, shivering, heaving until there was nothing left. She flushed the toilet and slumped back against the wall, wiping her mouth with a trembling hand. Flu, she whispered to herself. It's just the flu, or shock, but deep down, in a quiet, instinctual part of her brain, she knew it wasn't the flu. She counted the days in her head. She was late, 2 weeks late. With everything happening, the contract, the fire, the gala, she hadn't even noticed. Vanessa, Silvio's voice came from the bedroom. It was rough, tired. In here, she croaked. Silvio appeared in the doorway. He had showered. His hair was damp, and he was wearing gray sweatpants and a white t-shirt. He looked human, vulnerable. He saw her on the floor and was at her side in an instant. Are you sick? Is it the wound? Is it an infection? He reached for her forehead, his hand cool against her skin. I'm okay, she said, leaning into his touch. Just my stomach. Nerves, I think. Silvio helped her stand up. He led her back to the bed, tucking her in against the pillows. He sat on the edge of the mattress, taking her hand. The one with the ring. Is it done? Vanessa asked, searching his face. Silvio nodded. It is done. The Albanians will not bother us again. Their organization has been dismantled. And Brandon? She asked. It was a whisper. Brandon is with the police, Silvio said. He didn't smile, but there was a grim satisfaction in his eyes. He was found at the scene of a very violent crime. He will be spending the rest of his life in maximum security. He can never hurt you again. Vanessa let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for years. The boogeyman was gone. And you? She asked. Are you okay? Silvio looked down at their joined hands. I am a man who kills, Vanessa. I made peace with that a long time ago. But last night I killed because they hurt you. And that felt different. It felt righteous. He looked up at her, his dark eyes vulnerable. Can you live with that? Can you live with a man who has blood on his hands, as long as it is not yours? Vanessa looked at him. She saw the exhaustion, the fear of rejection, the desperate love he was trying to hide. She thought about the nausea in her stomach. She thought about the baby that might be growing inside her, a child made of light and shadow. She reached out and traced the line of his jaw. I told you, Silvio, she said softly. I choose you, all of you, the suit and the gun, the gala and the warehouse. I'm not going anywhere. Silvio leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle, chaste, a promise of peace after the war. Then sleep, he whispered. We have a life to build. And I have a feeling it is going to be a long one. Vanessa closed her eyes, the morning sickness fading into a dull background noise. She was safe. She was loved. And for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she belonged. 8 months had passed since the night the warehouse floor was stained with retribution, but the Chicago skyline remained the same, a jagged range of steel and glass piercing the autumn sky. What had changed, however, was everything else. Sweet Haven had reopened, scarred but standing, with a temporary kitchen built inside a leased storefront while a new warehouse rose from ash. Vanessa's grandmother had cried when Vanessa placed the first warm loaf into her hands again, proof that their legacy hadn't been burned out of the world. Jerry still drove the deliveries on Tuesdays, stubbornly refusing to quit. Silvio had quietly paid his lost wages and made sure Jerry's children would never go without. Vanessa stood in the center of the bridal suite at the Rinaldi estate, a sprawling mansion on the shores of Lake Michigan that made Silvio's penthouse look like a bachelor pad. She stared at her reflection in the gilded trifold mirror, one hand resting protectively on the swell of her stomach. At 8.5 months pregnant, she felt less like a bride and more like a planet in orbit. But the woman staring back at her was unrecognizable from the terrified baker who had worn a burgundy dress to a blind date nearly a year ago. This woman was substantial. She was radiant. She was formidable. Hold still, Ness, or I'm going to stick you with this pin, Jessica warned, kneeling on the floor surrounded by layers of ivory silk. I can't help it. Vanessa laughed, a rich, throaty sound. He's kicking again. I think he knows today is a big day. He wants to walk down the aisle himself. He can wait, Jessica muttered around a mouthful of pins. She stood up, smoothing the skirt of the custom gown. There, perfect. Look at you. Vanessa looked. The dress was a masterpiece of engineering and art, designed specifically to accommodate her heavily pregnant form without hiding it. It wasn't a tent. It was a celebration. The bodice was encrusted with thousands of tiny pearls that transitioned into a flowing silk skirt that draped over her bump like water over a stone. The neckline was deep, framing the yellow diamond necklace, the collar, as Silvio called it, that she hadn't taken off since the gala. It fits, Vanessa whispered. Of course it fits, Jessica said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. It was made for you. Just like this life. Jessica walked over to the side table and poured 2 glasses of sparkling cider. She handed one to Vanessa. To the CEO of Sweet Haven Enterprises. Vanessa took the glass, shaking her head. I still can't believe we opened the 3rd location last week. The numbers from the franchise in the loop are insane, Jess. You're a genius manager. I just organized what you built, Jessica corrected, her eyes shining with genuine pride. You created the recipes. You created the soul of the place. I just make sure the trucks run on time, and the money gets counted. Speaking of trucks, did you see the new delivery fleet? The logo looks amazing. I saw them. Vanessa smiled. Silvio insisted on armoring them, didn't he? The suspension looks heavy. He says it's for potholes. Jessica smirked. But we both know those croissant vans could survive a tactical strike. He doesn't take chances with you or your business anymore." "No," Vanessa agreed softly, rubbing her thumb over the condensation on the glass. "He doesn't." The door to the suite opened without a knock. Jessica spun around, ready to scold whoever was interrupting. But the words died in her throat. Silvio Rinaldi stood in the doorway. He was breathtaking. He wore a tuxedo of midnight blue, so dark it appeared black, with a velvet lapel that caught the light. His hair was trimmed sharp, his jaw freshly shaven, and he carried himself with the regal, predatory grace of a king entering his court. But it was his eyes, those dark, intense eyes, that sucked the air out of the room. They locked onto Vanessa and didn't let go. "You can't be here!" Jessica shrieked, waving her hands. "It's bad luck. You're not supposed to see the bride before the altar." Silvio didn't even glance at her. He walked into the room, his gaze fixed on Vanessa, as if she were the only source of gravity in the universe. "I make my own luck," Silvio said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Vanessa's chest. "And I needed to see her." Jessica looked between them, saw the electricity arcing across the room, and sighed. "Fine. I'll give you 2 minutes. But if the cake collapses, I'm blaming you, Rinaldi." She grabbed the bottle of cider and slipped out the door, closing it softly. Silvio stopped a foot away from Vanessa. He didn't touch her immediately. He just looked. He scanned her from the pearl-encrusted bodice to the swell of her belly, down to the hem of the silk skirt, and back up to her face. His expression wasn't just love. It was reverence. It was the look of a man witnessing a miracle. "Vanessa," he breathed. "Hi," she whispered, suddenly shy under the intensity of his inspection. "Do I look okay? I feel huge." "You look—" Silvio struggled for the word, shaking his head. He closed the distance and fell to his knees. Vanessa gasped as the most feared man in Chicago, the boss who controlled the docks and the unions, knelt on the floor in his custom tuxedo, disregarding the pristine fabric. He placed his large, warm hands on either side of her stomach. "You look like life," he said, pressing his forehead against her bump. "You look like everything I ever wanted and never thought I deserved." The baby kicked hard against his cheek. Silvio laughed, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy that he reserved only for this room, only for them. "He is strong," Silvio murmured, kissing the silk covering her belly. "He is ready to fight the world. He better be ready to sleep through the night first," Vanessa teased, threading her fingers through Silvio's dark hair. "Silvio, stand up. You're going to ruin your knees." He stood, towering over her again, and cupped her face in his hands. His thumbs brushed over her cheekbones. "Are you happy?" he asked, his eyes searching hers for any trace of the fear that used to live there. "Is this what you want? There is still a car waiting out back. You can run. You can take the money in the bakery and leave the danger behind." Vanessa covered his hands with hers. "Silvio, look at me." He held her gaze. "I have a business that I built. I have a best friend who runs it. I have a son kicking my bladder. And I have you. Why would I run from the only place I've ever felt safe? Because I am a dangerous man," he reminded her. "Because my world has sharp edges. And I have armor," she said, nodding to the dress, then to the ring, and finally to her heart. "We're partners, Silvio. You handle the shadows. I handle the light. And we meet in the middle." Silvio leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't hungry or desperate like their first time. It was deep, steady, a promise sealed in breath and bone. It was a vow spoken without words. 2 minutes are up!" Jessica yelled through the door. Silvio pulled back, resting his forehead against hers for one last second. "I will see you at the altar, Tesoro. My treasure. Try not to run." "I can't run," she laughed, patting her stomach. "I can barely waddle." Silvio smirked, that arrogant, charming tilt of his lips returning. "Then waddle to me. I will be waiting." The ceremony was held in the estate's sunken garden, a marvel of landscape architecture surrounded by high stone walls covered in ivy. It was beautiful, filled with white roses and golden ribbons. But Vanessa, with her honed instincts, noticed the other details too. She noticed that the gardeners standing by the perimeter were wearing earpieces. She noticed the slight bulge of shoulder holsters under the tuxedos of the ushers. She noticed that the drone flying overhead wasn't just for photography. It was surveillance. 8 months ago, this would have terrified her. Now, it was just background noise. It was the hum of the machine that kept her safe. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of burning leaves in Lake Michigan. The string quartet began to play a slow, haunting version of Can't Help Falling in Love. The guests stood. There were hundreds of them. Politicians, business tycoons, associates from the family, and the entire staff of Sweet Haven Bakery, who had been given the day off and flown in on a private charter. Vanessa walked down the aisle alone. Her parents were gone, and she had refused to let anyone else give her away. She belonged to herself until she chose to give herself to him. Silvio stood at the altar, flanked by Marco. He watched her approach with an intensity that made the rest of the world fade into gray. He didn't look at the guests. He didn't look at the priest. He looked only at her. She was halfway down the aisle when the sound tore through the serenity of the garden. The high-pitched wail of tires locking against asphalt echoed from the main driveway just beyond the garden wall. It was followed by the roar of an engine revving aggressively. The reaction was instantaneous. Silvio didn't flinch, but his hand moved inside his jacket. Marco stepped forward, shielding Silvio. The gardeners dropped their rakes and drew automatic weapons from beneath the flower bushes. The guests gasped, a ripple of panic moving through the crowd. Vanessa stopped. Her hand went to her stomach instinctively. The memory of the warehouse, of the laser dot, of the glass shattering, flooded back. Not today, she thought furiously. Please, not today. Silvio's eyes left hers for a split second, snapping to the perimeter wall. He raised a hand, signaling his men to hold fire, his face a mask of calculated violence. The engine roared again, closer. Then, a car door slammed. "Wait!" a voice shouted from the other side of the gate. "Don't shoot! I'm the best man! I have the rings!" The tension in the garden snapped like a rubber band, but not into violence, into confusion. Marco tapped his earpiece, listening to a report from the gate guards. His shoulders relaxed. He looked at Silvio and gave a sheepish nod. "It's Dante," Marco whispered loud enough for the front row to hear. "His car broke down on the highway. He borrowed a delivery scooter to get the rings here, then hitched a ride with the caterer's late van. He told the driver to floor it." Silvio let out a breath, his hand coming out of his jacket empty. He looked at Vanessa. She stood frozen in the middle of the aisle. Then, she started to laugh. It started as a giggle and bubbled up into a full, belly-shaking laugh that relieved the pressure in the air. "It's okay," Vanessa called out to the terrified guests. "It's just the rings. Nobody is dying today." The gate burst open, and Dante, Silvio's youngest cousin, ran in, disheveled, holding a velvet pillow. I'm here. Don't kill me, boss." Silvio shook his head, a wry smile touching his lips. He stepped down from the altar, ignoring protocol again, and walked to where Vanessa stood. "Are you okay?" he asked, taking her hands. "I'm fine," she said, wiping a tear of laughter from her eye. "Just never a dull moment with you, is there?" "Never," he promised. "Shall we finish this before anyone else decides to crash the gates? Please." They walked the rest of the way together. The vows were short. They didn't need flowery poetry. They had already proven their devotion in blood and ink. "I, Silvio, take you, Vanessa, to be my wife, to protect you when the world burns, to honor you when the silence falls, to love you until my last breath leaves my body. I, Vanessa, take you, Silvio, to be my husband, to stand with you in the shadows, to be your anchor in the storm, to love you and the family we are building forever." When Silvio slid the simple gold band onto her finger, next to the massive diamond, Vanessa felt a sense of completion so profound it made her lightheaded. "By the power vested in me," the priest said, looking slightly relieved that no shootout had occurred, "I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Silvio didn't wait. He pulled her close, mindful of the baby, and kissed her with a passion that made the guests cheer. It was a kiss of victory. They had won. The X was gone. The rivals were dead. The empire was secure. The reception was a blur of golden light, jazz music, and enough food to feed an army. The ballroom of the estate was decorated with thousands of candles, casting a warm glow over the revelry. Vanessa sat at the head table, her feet throbbing but her heart full. She watched Jessica dancing with Marco, laughing as the stoic bodyguard tried to keep up with her energy. She watched her bakery staff eating lobster and drinking champagne, treated like royalty. "You look tired," Silvio murmured, leaning close to her. His hand rested on the back of her chair, his fingers idly playing with the stray curls at the nape of her neck. "Happy tired," she corrected. "My feet are plotting a mutiny, though." "We can leave," he offered immediately. "I can clear the room in 5 minutes." "And miss the cake?" Vanessa pointed to the massive 5-tier confection in the center of the room, a creation from her own bakery, designed by her top pastry chef. "Absolutely not. I need to see if the buttercream held up." "Always the baker," Silvio chuckled, kissing her temple. "Come, dance with me. 1 song, then we cut the cake." He helped her up. She felt heavy, her center of gravity shifted, but Silvio held her as if she were weightless. They moved to the dance floor. The band slowed the tempo, playing a soft, instrumental jazz ballad. Silvio pulled her close, leaving space for the baby between them. They swayed gently. "You did it," Vanessa whispered against his lapel. "You gave me the fairy tale. A slightly twisted, dark mafia fairy tale, but a fairy tale nonetheless." "You wrote the story, Vanessa," he said seriously. "I just provided the setting. You are the one who turned a contract into a life. I love you, Silvio. I worship you, Vanessa." She closed her eyes, resting her head on his shoulder, letting the music wash over her. She felt the baby shift again, a low, deep pressure. Then she felt something else. A sharp, distinct pop low in her abdomen, followed immediately by a gush of warmth. Vanessa stopped moving. Her eyes snapped open. "Silvio," she said, her voice strangled. He stopped instantly. "What is it? Are you in pain?" "The cake," she said, looking down at the puddle of clear fluid rapidly expanding on the marble floor beneath her gold dress. "We're going to have to skip the cake." Silvio followed her gaze. He stared at the water. For a second, the ruthless Mafia boss looked completely, utterly panicked. "Is that my water?" Vanessa confirmed, gripping his lapel tighter as a contraction hit her. Not a practice one, but a real, tightening cramp that stole her breath. "It's time." The transformation in Silvio was instantaneous. The panic vanished, replaced by tactical command mode. "Marco!" he roared over the music. The music cut out. The room went silent. "Get the car. Call the hospital. Tell Dr. Vanzetti to prep the delivery suite." Silvio barked orders as he scooped Vanessa up into his arms. "Silvio, I can walk," she protested, though another contraction made her wince. "You are in labor. You do not walk," he stated, striding toward the exit. "Out of my way! Move!" The guests parted like the Red Sea. Jessica came running up, her face pale. "Is it the baby?" "It's the baby!" Vanessa called out over Silvio's shoulder, actually laughing despite the pain. "Jess! Save me a slice of cake!" "Go! Go!" Jessica shouted, clapping her hands. Silvio carried her out of the ballroom, down the grand steps, and into the waiting limousine that Marco had already pulled up. He settled her in the back seat, shouting at the driver to drive. As the car sped away, leaving the party behind, Vanessa gripped Silvio's hand. The pain was intensifying, coming in waves. "Breathe," Silvio coached, looking more stressed than he had during the shootout. In and out, just like the class. "You hated the class," she panted. "I hated the pillows," he corrected, wiping sweat from her forehead with his silk handkerchief. The breathing was logical. "You are doing great, Tesoro. My treasure. We will be there in 10 minutes. "Silvio," she gasped as the contraction peaked. "If I break your hand, I'm sorry." "Break it," he offered, offering his other hand too. "Break whatever you need. Just bring our son to me." The labor was long. It was messy. It was agonizing. It was nothing like the movies. For 6 hours, Vanessa fought. She sweated, she cursed, she cried. And through every second of it, Silvio was there. He didn't leave the room. He didn't look away. He held her hand. He fed her ice chips. He let her scream into his shoulder. He was her anchor in the storm of biology that was taking over her body. When the final moment came, when the doctor said it was time to push, Silvio was right beside her head, whispering encouragement in Italian, his voice thick with emotion. "You are a warrior," he told her. "You are the strongest thing on this earth. One more, Vanessa. Just one more." With a final guttural cry that ripped from her throat, Vanessa gave everything she had left. And then, the sound changed. A thin, high-pitched wail filled the room. Vanessa collapsed back onto the pillows, sobbing with exhaustion. Is he okay?" "He is perfect," the doctor announced. Silvio watched as the nurses cleaned the infant. Tears were streaming down his face, unashamedly. He looked at the bloody, squalling bundle as if it were the Holy Grail. The nurse wrapped the baby in a blanket and handed him to Vanessa. She looked down. He was tiny, red-faced, and furious at the world. He had a tuft of black hair, and when he blinked his eyes open for a second, she saw they were dark. Dark like obsidian. Dark like his father's. "Hi," she whispered, touching his tiny fist. "Hi, little one." Silvio leaned over the bed, his presence encompassing them both. He reached out a trembling finger and stroked the baby's cheek. The baby turned his head toward the touch. "A son," Silvio whispered, his voice cracking. "Alessandro. We will call him Alessandro. Alessandro Rinaldi." Vanessa tested the name. It sounded strong. It sounded like a legacy. "I like it." Silvio kissed her, tasting of salt and joy. "Thank you. Thank you for this life. Thank you for him." 3 days later, Vanessa stood on the balcony of the penthouse, the same balcony where she had once stood in a silk robe, terrified of the future. The city of Chicago lay spread out below them, a grid of lights twinkling in the twilight. She held Alessandro in her arms. He was sleeping, wrapped in a blanket knitted by Jessica. Silvio came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, careful of her healing body. He rested his chin on her shoulder, looking down at his son. "He is sleeping?" Silvio asked softly. "For now." Vanessa smiled. "He has your temper, though. When he's hungry, the whole building knows it." "Good," Silvio said. "He will need a loud voice to lead this family one day." Vanessa leaned back into him. "You know, a year ago, I was serving pasta and dodging a man who called me worthless. I was counting pennies to pay rent. I thought my life was over. And now?" Vanessa looked at the reflection in the glass door. She saw a woman who had walked through fire and come out forged in gold. She saw a mother holding the future in her arms. She saw a wife held by a man who would tear down the sky to keep her dry. Brandon was gone, rotting in a cell, a forgotten memory. The Albanians were a ghost story told to frighten new criminals. Sweet Haven was an empire of sugar and flour. "Now," Vanessa said, turning her head to kiss her husband. "Now, I think the contract was the best deal I ever made." Silvio smiled, the dangerous, possessive smile of the Mafia boss, softened by the love of a father. "It was not a contract, Vanessa," he whispered, tightening his hold on his world. "It was destiny." Below them, the city moved on, unaware of the kings and queens watching from above. But in the penthouse, surrounded by glass and steel and love, the Rinaldi family had finally, truly, come home.